My name is Joyce White. I'm the food historian at Riversdale House Museum. Welcome to this look at the type of foods American soldiers may have consumed while fighting in the 1814 Battle of Bladensburg, a War of 1812 campaign fought near Riversdale in Prince George's County, Maryland. The Battle of Bladensburg, a battle of the Chesapeake campaign of the War of 1812, was fought on August 24, 1814. The Americans' dubious performance led them to a disgraceful defeat in which many soldiers dropped their weapons and fled, earning the battle the disapproving moniker the Bladensburg Races. Consequently, this defeat led to the disastrous British capture and burning of Washington, D.C. Rosalie Calvert, the mistress of Riversdale, a manor and plantation located a short distance from the battleground, described the humiliating defeat of the Americans in an August 30th letter to her sister Isabel von Havre. "You have heard the news of the Battle of Bladensburg, where the English defeated the American troops with Madison, as in president, not at their head, but at their rear." Remarkably, before the British burned the White House, they ate the dinner and drank the wines that had been served just before the invasion. Though it's not really surprising that soldiers on daily rations of just plain food would not let a good meal go to waste. So what did American soldiers eat during the War of 1812? Was the food good or bad, plentiful or scarce? How did they cook it? During the next few minutes, we will explore the answers to these questions. Soldiers during the War of 1812 were given daily rations in portions of 6 messes. To understand this better, a quote from an 1813 report from the Northwest Army in the Lake Erie region explains this. "Our company is divided into messes of 6 men each. Our rations are delivered together to each mess when we encamp at night." To us, and to their French and British opponents who had more varied rations, the food given to American soldiers seems meager and plain at best. However, we must realize that the guarantee of receiving any food at all on a daily basis was a relief to the poorest men, who often went without food before becoming soldiers. Each American soldier was supposed to receive a small variety of daily rations, including 20 ounces of bone-in beef, such as these oxtails. The bones are important because they contain nutritious marrow. Turning rations into a decent meal was not always easy, because the soldiers generally were not given adequate cooking equipment. Therefore, beef was often simply boiled. However, sometimes the soldiers came up with inventive means of roasting, such as using makeshift spits made out of twigs. If beef was not available, the soldiers were given 12 ounces of salt pork or fat bacon. Sometimes the soldiers were forced to eat the cured pork raw, if weather or camp conditions made it impossible for them to make a cook fire. In addition to meat, soldiers were given 18 ounces of bread, often some sort of hardtack made from just water and flour. As a substitute for bread, soldiers may have been given 18 ounces of flour instead. The type of flour they received was most likely the cheap kind, such as unbolted or semi-bolted. Bolting is the process of sifting out the nutritious bran and germ from the flour. Pure white bolted flour was highly favored and therefore expensive, but also less nutritious. If soldiers were given the cheaper flour, that was actually a good thing because it was healthier for them. In camp, breads were often made with just flour, water, and maybe salt. They were shaped into cakes and often crudely baked, either by wrapping them in paper, if they had any to spare, or in wet leaves. Without any type of an oven, these were likely placed in ashes or on hot stones to bake. Another way soldiers made their bread was by baking it on a pole such as a spit. The dough was coiled around the pole and baked over the fire. The baked bread comes off the pole in the shape of a coil. Unsurprisingly, this bread was aptly named pole bread. Soldiers were also given 2 quarts of salt, which was meant to last them for 100 rations or days. They were also given 4 quarts of apple cider vinegar per 100 rations. The soldiers also received a daily ration of 1 gill, which equals about 1/2 cup or 4 ounces of whiskey, rum, or brandy. That would be enough to knock me out, but I wonder how the soldiers felt about that amount. Apart from this short list of foods, American soldiers were not guaranteed anything else, such as fresh vegetables or fruits, or legumes like peas and beans. This means that they were not nearly as healthy as they could have been, which is not really surprising in a time of war. Though proper nutrition was not guaranteed and shortages of rations sometimes occurred, special treats such as hot chocolate were occasionally given to the soldiers. Chocolate was a special treat for American soldiers, even dating back as far as the French and Indian War. Lieutenant John Le Couture wrote about the stimulating effects of chocolate amidst a sea of carnage after the Battle of Lundy's Lane that took place on July 25, 1814, in Niagara Falls, Ontario. He wrote, "We had to wait on our slaughterhouse till 11 before we got a mouthful, when a great camp kettle full of thick chocolate revived us surprisingly, though we devoured it among dead bodies in all directions." Sometimes soldiers were able to purchase a variety of goods, including food and drink, from army followers called sutlers. Inevitably, price gouging usually occurred, meaning that soldiers had to pay quite a high proportion of their $8 monthly salaries for these extra goodies. Here are some examples of the high prices charged to soldiers at Fort Meigs during the summer of 1813. 25 cents for bacon, 50 cents for chocolate, 62.5 cents for coffee, $3 for molasses, $1.25 for a bottle of whiskey, $4.50 for a bottle of brandy or rum. If an army marches on its stomach, then I hope you have enjoyed this brief but important look at the foods of American soldiers during the War of 1812. In future, please plan to visit Riversdale House Museum in August for its annual Battle of Bladensburg reenactment.